Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and today's project is going to be a Penn Sargus. It's the 5000 variety, and it's a nice medium-sized reel for inshore ocean surf casting, general purpose reel. And actually, when folks ask me, what their first reel should be, I often suggest a 5000 size reel because it kind of fits in with everything. It's good for deep lakes, rivers, casting, boats, and some trolling. So this is a good one to start with. So this is the Penn Sargus. We're going to start by taking it apart as I do with all of the reels and get down to the basics. We'll show you how the reel is manufactured, the components behind it, and then we'll take a look at the general service behind it. So we start by removing the spool and the handle. The handle is a threaded handle, so you crank backwards to take the spool off, or in this case clockwise. And then we want to remove that case underneath here so we can get to the gearing. So we have 3 case screws, and then we have a bump guard screw. These are all Phillips heads, so I'm going to grab my Phillips head screwdriver. And it's always good to have a lot of tools on your bench because you're never quite sure what tool is going to be needed, and you certainly want to be within reach of it. So you just see as we take that off that we have a 4th screw hiding underneath. You're also going to make a mental note that that 4th screw is different than the other 3. So we're going to take these out. This one should be a threaded long screw. And as you'll notice, I'm putting those into a parts tray. Parts tray just happens to be a bottom of a gallon milk jug, but it serves its purpose in that it keeps all of the pieces and parts in one place so that I know as I go to reassemble a reel where to look for it. So I have I'm using a Phillips head screwdriver, and these screws are just a little bit bigger than the others. So I'm going to just switch over to a larger bit to take these out. There's 3 of them. Normally I would take these and lay these out on a work table to make sure that all of these screws are the same size. I am familiar with this reel. I do know that the side plate screws, with the exception of the one under the bump guard, are identical. So I'm just placing them there right into the tray. If you are working on a reel for the first time, you don't know the reel, then I suggest as you take these off, you just make a mental note of where they came out of so that it's easy to reinstall. So what if you did that and you got stuck and you didn't know where the pieces and parts go? Then what you want to do is you want to pull a schematic, or at least bring it up on your iPad or a tablet, and take a look at the exploded view. It'll tell you where the pieces and parts are. And since this is a Penn reel, those schematics are available at the it used to be the PennParts.com website. Now it's MysticParts.com. And those will help you. So this reel was made around 2010. We can tell that it needs cleaning. It's got some dirty grease in there, and that's what we're going to go ahead and do here. So I've taken off the side plate that kind of shows us the construct. It's very much a typical construct of a spinning reel of that era. It's got, I believe it's got 2 ball bearings, one on each side and a ball bearing up top here. So let's go ahead and take that off. And in order to get the main gear out, typically that has to come out, that has to come out after you remove the axle shaft. That axle shaft is held in by a couple of, in this case it's held in by 1 Phillips head screw, so we're going to go ahead and take that off. And once we do this, you can remove the axle shaft from the crosswind block. There is a second one that was hiding under the dirty grease. I thought there was 2. So we'll take that second one out as well. Then we can pull the axle shaft out. And once we have the axle shaft out, now we can take the main gear out. And the reason why you couldn't do that before was that axle shaft rides between the driver for the crosswind gear and the main gear. And this is what's happening if you're trying to pull it out from the other side. So this one just needs fresh lubrication. You can tell that it's pretty dirty in there. So this one's been fished a long time in between servicing. That's kind of just black and gunk at the moment there. So let's get all of that out. Notice I'm just using a cotton swab for that. You can also use a little fabric brush or something to clear the grease from the channels of it. And what you want to do as you're clearing this out is you want to check to make sure that all of the teeth are even in wear and that there's nothing chipped or uneven on the sides here that would indicate some kind of grinding. And you also want to do the same thing on the back gear with the crosswind driver portion of this. All right, so I'm just going to take a paper towel and just finish taking the rest of that off then. Okay, once you take that off, we can set that into the parts. Oh, there's a little bit of junk on here too. Let's get that off. Okay, and there's a shim that belongs there on top of the bearing. Okay, so that goes into the box. We have the crosswind gear here, and we have the crosswind block. This is the block. It has a channel behind it, and again, we can see that's pretty cluttered with some old grease. So again, back to our handy cotton swab. Get that old grease out of there. Wipe it off with the paper towel, do some house cleaning kind of stuff. Fronts as well. And then same thing underneath here. So I would say that it's probably been a couple of years since this reel was serviced based on the way it looks. We'll pull the crosswind gear, do the same thing here. Now this is dirty grease, but I'm not noticing any metal shavings or filings or anything in this, so that's all good. And I just want to make sure that the surface on the crosswind gear is nice and clean. Same thing with the back. I'm going to go in and do the same thing with the case here. I'm going to go clean that up. Now, this is coming off pretty easily. If you found out that this stuff was just kind of coagulated and not cooperative, then one of the things we could do is we could hit it with some a light degreaser or general purpose, something like a WD-40, which is a penetrating oil in the degreaser. We'll just do that as an example to show you that that will help you remove any stubborn grease that's in there. And again, this isn't very stubborn, but you know, we'll take our time to clean this up as well. Okay, so that's the bottom of the reel here. You want to do the same thing up top here. You want to check that pinion gear, make sure that it's clean, which it is. It's spinning nicely. Okay, so these parts are going to go into the tray. Let's go up top then. We'll go take a look at the top assembly underneath the rotor here. There's a set screw and a little clip that holds that together. You take that off. And this goes into the parts basket as well. And then we'll grab a wrench. Now this one's, what I like about this is one of these cap nuts. The cap nut holds equal tension on it, but doesn't allow you to over tighten it. And that's a good thing to me. All right, and then we'll pull off the rotor, and we'll see that we pretty much have a typical kind of an anti-reverse scheme here. You've got a lot of clicks, so this is not a infinite anti-reverse reel. The anti-reverse stop will intersect with the ridges on there. This is your anti-reverse mechanism, and what will happen is as you're driving the reel, it's fine, and then as soon as you back the reel off, well, in this case we do have an anti-reverse in there. Okay, so we can take this off then. And there's a little bit of dirt in there, so we do want to make sure that we clean that dirt up as well. I'm going to pull this off because it's been a while. I do see a little bit of sand around here, so I'm just going to make sure that as we do this, that all of those pieces are cleaned up. There's 3 screws that hold the collar on. Then the collar will hold the anti-reverse bearing and the pinion gear in place. So that's what we're doing right now, just setting these to the side. And I'm going to leave these on my table because I'm not going far with the servicing on this. I'm going to pull it out, I'm going to lube it and put it right back in. And just set them to the side because it's easy enough to brush these. And then we can just pull that assembly out and make sure that we're clean. Here's what I was talking about. There's some gunk and grime in there, so there's no sense not going in and cleaning this up. You know, take that paper towel and just clear the channel out. And just a little bit below there, we'll grab that, we can do that from underneath. So again, if you have a reel that you haven't worked on in a while, I would recommend that you go this extra step here. So we're going to take this off. This is a collar with the anti-reverse. Just make sure you know the sequence. If you don't know the sequence to it, then what's going to happen is you're going to put that anti-reverse in backwards. If you put that anti-reverse in backwards, it's not going to function properly. It'll function, but only the going the wrong way. So I'm clearing out the channels now of that pinion gear. It's got some accumulated grease, so I'm just running my fingernail through those channels just to make sure that it's all cleaned. We're going to go ahead now and use some Penn Precision Reel Grease to re-lube the channels here. Okay, so this is the way that the stack came back. Here's a bearing that sits on top of that. Then we have the inside of the anti-reverse gear. It's got an oblong channel in it that matches the flat sides of the pinion gear. A little bit of dirt on this anti-reverse. Let's go ahead and take that off. Just going to check the inside. Everything is fine. This is kind of a sealed bearing. You can put a little bit of lube in there, so we'll go ahead and do that. That sits on top of the ferrule then, and then we have our top seat here in terms of the channel. Oops. So a little bit of difficulty getting it reseated. Not terribly unusual for me. There we go. Clip it back in. Okay, we're back on. That's your drag stack. We're going to just put a drop of oil on that top bearing. And we can take this stack and we can place it back into the holder. Grab our clip. As I said, I was just leaving these nearby because I knew we weren't going far with these. If you're going to rebuild the reel, if you were going to go and get a replacement bearing, for example, then of course you want to put these things in a safe place where they're not going to get knocked around in the interim. But in this case, we were going right back on with that. And those of you that watch the video know this is time to go get a cup of coffee, because I'll be fiddling around with these small screws for a little bit. Okay, there we go. We got that one started. That seems to be the tough one for me, the first one. The rest of them should line up and go in relatively easy. I'm using a micro screwdriver. It really doesn't matter. Like I said, if you have an assortment of tools on your bench, you can generally find which ones work best for you, and then play off of that in terms of future references. But the reel is a nice reel. It's there's nothing, you know, in the 2010 era, this was a good reel. It still is a good reel. It was designed with anti-reverse, which was making its way in at that point, the instant anti-reverse. There's been a couple of different schemes in terms of how those work, but overall, this one, you know, has stood the test of time. Reels have become more compact. They've become a little bit more lightweight. The materials have changed, but for the most part, the reel is pretty much the same. Okay, we're going back down now, and we're going to finish by lubing and reinstalling the base. This is your crosswind gear, so we want to put fresh lubrication on the back of that and inside where it's going to ride on that spoke here, a little stud. There is no screw. Some reels do have a screw. We're going to put some on the face of this as well. The reason for that is that crosswind block is going to ride on that. We're going to put a little bit of lube in the channel, not too much. If you put too much lube in that channel, what's going to happen is that it's going to back up on the sides, and it's going to actually inhibit the throw of that axle. And you want to align that crosswind block with the stud. Make sure that the stud is underneath. And then we want to go up and put the rotor back on. I'm going to hold this so that it doesn't trip out. Throw our rotor back on. Grab the rotor nut that was in here that we were mentioning before. Has that nice little feature about the cap so that you can't over tighten it. I like to do as much of that tighten by hand as possible, just so I don't cross thread it. Alright, we're in good shape there. A quick spin will tell us that we have it right. This is where you know you have your anti-reverse proper. Alright, we'll come back down then. We're going to grab that main gear. Going to do the same thing here. Put a little bit of the grease into the teeth, even though it seems fairly greased up there. We want to make sure we get some nice fresh grease in there. Fresh grease on the point where it'll go inside the bearing. Fresh grease on the teeth. You don't have to cover them all. And then we're going to go up top while we're at it and put the grease into the pinion gear. And we've got enough there that it'll operate properly. Okay, you want to make sure as you go to reassemble the reel that the crosswind block is low. That's why we moved it to the bottom there before we reinstalled the main gear. And then we can put the axle shaft in. You can clean that axle shaft, so I'm just going to grab that. If you found that there was some coagulated grease and junk on there, then what you would want to do is use a piece of steel wool or something to make sure that it's all off. In this case, we're in good condition with that. Then it's just a matter of aligning the axle shaft and the crosswind block. And for whatever reason, I'm not quite there. There we go. Don't hit anything, just be patient. That's the best answer I can give folks that get frustrated by something like that. Now we know we have the two little flathead screws there. Let's go find them and put them back in to hold the axle in place. So the technology here is pretty much what you've seen in a lot of reels that I've done. This is Penn's version of it, and it's a good technology. It's not overly engineered. I would imagine this was a mid-priced reel at the time. I do remember that we had a couple of the series out there. I don't remember where Sargus fell in the series, but overall they were nice reels for the time. I'm going to put the last bearing back here. I'll turn that around. Get the shims on the inside. I'm going to grab the oils. Make sure that that bearing is oiled there. Now we can put that side plate back on. Make sure it's still got a nice spin to it, which it does. Now we go for our side plate screws. Remember we had 3 that were the same and 1 that was different. I'm going to go grab the 3 that are the same first. And these screws have little washers on them. If you find a little plastic washer like that and you wonder where it came from, that's where it comes from. Sometimes those washers get stuck in the case as you're disassembling. Sometimes they are on the screw when they come out. Just make sure that you put them back in. It's a little bit of a buffer. Actually helps you from over tightening the reel and causing a bind in that side plate. Okay, so that's that. This one. And what I just noticed, I'm going to have to take that out again. I'm just looking at my parts basket, and that's always a good place to store parts so you know when to reassemble, but also if you casual glance at the eye can tell you I've got a part in there that I didn't re-put in, reinstall properly, so now's the time to go do that. So what that part is it's the lock mechanism for the rotor nut. Unfortunately, with this reel, you got to go take the axle shaft out again to go make sure that it's properly done. And a little bit of rework there, but that's okay. It'll show you again how to do that. So take those two nuts, the two screws out of the crosswind block. And in this case, I'm not going back into the parts basket with these because it's just going to be momentary that I have these things laid out. Pull that shaft out. Now I've got that locking mechanism that I didn't set properly the last time, didn't reinstall. And you really don't want to leave these go. You can't say, it's just a minor part, let it go. You don't want to do that because this one does have a purpose, and the purpose is to stop the spin or the unwinding of that nut, because it does spin opposite the way that the reel, or it does thread opposite the way that the reel is set up. So it can, over time, work itself free. And if it does work itself free, you wind up with a wobble in your rotor. And that wobble will cause your line to spool erratically. So take the time, if you notice something like this, to go back and do this. And I know as I do these videos from time to time, my first inclination is, oh my gosh, I made a mistake, I better, gloss over it or something. No, don't do that. Just take your time, go back and figure it out the right way, and save yourself the aggravation later of having a reel come back that's got that wobble in it or something. What did that fix take? Another minute and a half, so not to worry about it, just get it done correctly. Okay, then we put the other one back in. Then we can close it back up again, and we'll go up top and see what's going on with the drags. This one in. Take the side plate again. Nice snap. You always like to hear that snap when you go put these back in. If it's not snapping, sometimes it's just been you're forcing something and it's going to cause a bind, and then you're going to be in trouble when you go to do the reel again, spinning it. Okay, so this is the Sargus, again, 2010, around that time manufacture, and solid reel. It's been around 9 years here with the fella, and I'm sure he's got a lot of good fish on it because he brought it in for service. It shows that it's been used because of the age and dirt and the grease, and this one's going to be ready to go fishing for another season. So good thing that they figured out it was time to do that, and it's a good thing that they brought it in for the service. Alright, then we have the small one. You remember that little screw was different. Make sure that one gets in there. Again, a nice little spin. This is nice and smooth now. Get the bump guard. Bump guard goes on. We have that little screw in the bump guard, and my parts basket is empty, so that's a good sign. Before it wasn't empty, and I thought I was pretty much done there, so it enabled me to go back and avoid a problem. Okay, so that's the bottom of the reel. We'll just put the handle on, and then we'll go service the drags, and this reel will be done. Again, this spins counterclockwise now. And there you go. We got a nice turning reel there. So let's go up top. This one has got a shield on it for the water. Some of these that you see, you'll find have springs in it. In this case, we have a metal collar held down by 3 screws. So we're going to take those out. And that'll give us access to the drag system. I'm just going to top these out here. Those are small screws, so we're going to have fun putting them back in. Grab my screwdriver. That should be able to take the collar off. Now I can take the drag washers out. Okay, and these drag washers are felt. So we want to lay them out. We have felt, metal, felt, eared washer, another felt, metal, felt, another eared washer, felt, metal. So we have a series of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 drag washers here, and only the top one appears to have got the dirt. You want to check the channel here. The channel is pretty clean. Take that rag and just ounce of prevention kind of thing. Clean up some of it around the collar there. Now, felt washers get oiled. They don't get greased. And oiling is simply a matter of giving it a good soaking just to keep it flexible. That's the whole idea of the oil here. Now, these have got a lot of washers in them. Some folks have been disappointed with felt. I haven't seen it personally to the point where it's driven me nuts, but some people get crazy about it. They say with overuse, these felt washers tear. And the question I always get is, can they be replaced or upgraded to carbon text or HT100s? And the answer is yes, they can. So that happens a lot in the Penn Fierce reel. I hear people chewing up the washers in the Penn Fierce, and they want to replace them, and they can do that. And I'm guessing the Fierce is probably the modern day equivalent of the Sargus reel. So yeah, Smooth Drag has the carbon text upgrades, and I believe if you go to mysticparts.com, you'll find the upgrades for the HT100s. All right, I'm going to try and put these back in first because many of you know I don't do well with small pieces of parts. I'm going to try and get these started ahead. You can find the 3 slots where these belong. Of course, you try and figure out how to get them aligned. I'm going to take the one out and use my trusty pin just to get that aligned with the